all of you know why we are here, so I'm not going to spend too much time welcoming you, saying those nice things that people normally say at nice meetings about nice people. May I have on alongside here on the race Professor Tadagata Sen Gupta. I hope I've got the pronunciation right. Okay, when he comes in, please ensure he's here. Can we also have Rama Naga here on stage? To the uninitiated, Rama Naga is the General Secretary of the JNU Students' Union. He's one of those guys you need to be careful with. He's anti-Indian. There's sedition charges against him. So be very careful, don't shake hands with him. I'm told we live in times when sedition is contagious. And all of us could be described anti-nationals. So be very careful about that. We wait for Professor as he comes in. Anand, where are you? Come fast. Anand works on urban issues. He ensures trees don't get cut. At least he makes noise about that. We don't know if all of us can do that together. He's basically a geographer. About Rana, I think nothing talks about a person more than the book that they write. And I'm sure all of you will either buy a copy of, I'm sure all of you will buy a copy of it. So, I'll let the book talk about her, except telling you that she's been with NDTV, she's been with Outlook, she's been with Tehelka. I know some people don't like that as a reference point any the longer. So not being very much between you and the audience, I know the word Gujarat has two extreme reactions in our society. It can make some people very dizzy. That's when they come back to India for a short trip in between their foreign trips. It can make some people very, very 48, 58-inch chests. The whole, there's a metamorphosis of the chaiwala, and a very Kafkaesque metamorphosis. We also have another Gujarat that still continues to send sends the spill, chill down your spine. Please. I now know why somebody many years ago said we are a functional anarchy. Anyway, as we'll have Anand Marikiti Setsukur, 5 minutes.
Welcome everyone. Where shall I start?
Okay. We'll first do a book. We'll have the book release, sure. And then we'll have the word
since the cameras have already taken 2 minutes of my 5 minutes, I'm going to be really, really short. Many years after the... Sure. Many years after the... Can you all hear me? No. Something wrong with this mic. Functional mic. Many years after 2002, I called a friend of mine who kind of keeps moving between Gujarat and Rajasthan. And I said, how are you? And he said, मैं सोच रहा हूँ कि मेरी पहचान अपने छाती के नाप से होनी चाहिए कि अपने विचार के ताप से होना चाहिए. And it really struck me that there are people who can make that distinction so simply. What are we proud of? Are we proud of the circumference of our chest, the pride of being aggressive, or are we proud of the capability to think through issues? And I think that in the last 10-15 years, one of the frightening things that has happened in this country is that the space to think about issues has been seriously shrinking. Issues have to be sorted out in black and white terms. Options are really reduced, and we just are not able to reflect on what has happened, what are the really valuable things in our lives anymore. And it's in moments like that to somehow disrupt the smooth flow of blind conversation. That's when work like this is really important for us. It makes us stop. It leaves you with the sense that, look, there's nothing really that can be said. You have to just stop saying anything. You have to stop chattering and think about what people have been going through at the most intimate levels and in public life. So that's what the value of anything that has been said about Gujarat for me in Lamakan over the last many years has been. It's something that comes through on a day-to-day basis in all kinds of new forms, in new names. It's not something that happened at some point of time and has gone away. It keeps coming back to us from incidents and events all around us on a moment-to-moment basis, on a daily basis.
Another minute.
Yeah, and stop. Yeah, so with that I'll stop actually here. I really don't have much to say. I hope that you will all listen to what is being said and try not to argue too heavily. I think these are things that one needs to pay attention to and reflect on.
Thank you very much, Anand. Can I now have yes, 5 minutes.
It's difficult to put my words in 5 minutes because this is a JNU problem actually. So JNU people keep speaking, in debates and discussion in UGBM, GBM and every discussion. So before I start my speech, first of all I would like to request all of you to buy the book which is kept at the end of this program because it is necessary. Because Rana has produced this, publicized this book. It is a self-publicized model. So no any publishing house was agreed to publish a book when she was ready to publish and she was ready to give for publication. So this is also a fact of the book. And we know many things, and we had also invited Rana to JNU, and she had also come and delivered many things about the book. And she had also I mean, many people had organized programs in Delhi for inaugurating her book. So many people were joined there. So I would like to just bring 2-3 things about the book, because it is necessary about the intervention of the book and the present context in which the book was released. क्योंकि आप लोग जानते हैं कि अभी जो एक बोला जा रहा है कि भाई हमारे 2 साल खत्म होने को है, और हम लोग जो गुजरात मॉडल था, द गुजरात मॉडल वाज यूज्ड थ्रू आउट द कंट्री, एंड नाउ इट इज आर्ग्यूड बाय द गवर्नमेंट दैट आवर नेशन इज चेंजिंग. बोला जा रहा है कि देश बदल रहा है, लेकिन राणा आयोग का जो किताब है इस बात को दर्शाता है कि जो गुजरात मॉडल का बात आप लोग कर रहे हैं वो गुजरात मॉडल एकदम से फेक है. It is based on discrimination, fake encounters and killings, and it shows this. और उसके लिए राणा आयोग से भी हम लोगों को शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहिए, and we should recognize her courage that she put her life into danger and did this sting operation, and after that she decided to publish the book. And there are many things in the book which I will not go into details. You can get that facts when Rana will come here and speak about that. किंतु लेकिन ये बात हम लोग को बहुत पुरजोर तरीके से ये रिकॉग्नाइज करना चाहिए कि अभी के समय में ये जो इंटरवेंशन हुआ है इस किताब का, इसका जो महत्व है उसको हम लोग को समझने की जरूरत है. क्योंकि बहुत सारी चीजें उस दिन भी राना आई थी जेएनयू में और बोल के गई कि ये जब पब्लिश करने गई तो मना कर दिया गया बहुत सारे पब्लिशिंग हाउस के द्वारा. बहुत सारे आर्गुमेंट आए कि नहीं हम लोग इसको पब्लिशाइज नहीं कर पाएंगे क्योंकि ये तो उतना जो एक रिक्वायरमेंट होता है उसको मैंने फुलफिल नहीं कर पाता है. तो राणा ने डिसाइड किया कि ये जो किताब है उसको मैंने खुद से पब्लिसाइज करेंगे. और आज इस बात का हम लोग को खुशी भी है कि ये जो किताब है वो मैंने सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग मॉडल में और खुद का जो पब्लिशिंग है उसमें बहुत सारे लोगों ने इसको खरीदा है और बहुत सारे लोगों ने इसको एक रिकॉग्नाइज और मान्यता रूप से उसको प्राप्त किया है और बहुत सारे लोगों ने इसको एक मान्यता भी दिया है. इसीलिए बहुत ज़रूरी है कि आज इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हम लोग इसकी जो महत्व है उसको जानें. और मैं ज़्यादा नहीं बोलूँगा इसके बारे में क्योंकि समय भी ये है, लेकिन कुछ जो चीज़ें हैं मैं लिंक करना चाहूँगा और बस अपनी बात को खत्म करूँगा. क्योंकि जिस तरीके से जो पॉइंट है इस किताब में वो बोला गया है कि राणा के द्वारा ही कि जो गुजरात में मसाकस हुए, जो गुजरात में 2012 में मसाकस हुए और पूरे जो वहाँ पे जो कम्युनिटीज थे, जो डिप्राइव्ड सेक्शन से जो माइनॉरिटीज कम्युनिटीज थे उनकी जाने गई और उनकी जाने किन लोग के द्वारा गया और जो एनकाउंटर्स हुए थे वो कौन लोग करवाए थे. बहुत ही सरप्राइजिंग ये फैक्ट है कि जो स्टेट मशीनरी में जो पुलिस ऑफिसर्स थे जो वहाँ के मशीनरी में काम करते थे वो मैक्सिमम जो लोग हैं वो दलित या फिर डिप्राइव्ड सेक्शन से हैं. तो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ने उसको यूज किया कि जो दलित होते हैं उनको ये काम करवाने के लिए. ये बहुत एक सरप्राइजिंग फैक्ट हम लोग को लग सकता है, लेकिन ये सच्चाई है जो इस बुक के माध्यम में हम लोग को बोला गया है. क्योंकि आखिर में इस बात को मैं जेएनयू से रिलेट करना चाहूँगा. क्योंकि जब हम लोग के ऊपर जेएनयू का बारे में आप लोग जानते हैं जब अटैक हुआ तो बोला गया कि आप लोग कैसे सेना के बारे में बोल सकते हैं, कैसे पुलिस के बारे में बोल सकते हैं, क्योंकि ये लोग हम लोग को प्रोटेक्शन देते हैं, ये लोग देश के लिए काम करते हैं, इसलिए आप उनके खिलाफ बोल ही नहीं सकते हैं. बस इसी के साथ मैं बात खत्म करूंगा. क्योंकि गुजरात जो दंगा हुआ था उसमें जिन जिन लोगों को इस्तेमाल किया गया, जो फेक एनकाउंटर्स हुए थे उन पे जिन जिन लोगों को इस्तेमाल किया गया वही सेम पुलिस ऑफिसर थे जो डिप्राइव सेक्शन से आते थे. आप लोगों को पता होगा वीर सिंह अभी जो हाल ही में जिनका जो मार्टरडम हुआ है, जो शहीद हुए हैं, वो भी एक दलित थे. लेकिन उनके शहादत के बाद, उनके शहीद होने के बाद जब वो अपनी गांव पे जाते हैं तो उनको अपनी जो अंतिम संस्कार करने के लिए टू कंप्लीट हिज लास्ट रीड्स उसके लिए भी उनको जमीन नहीं मिलता है, उनके लिए भी जमीन नहीं दिया जाता है. ये भी सच्चाई है. इसीलिए मैं ज़्यादा अपनी बात को बढ़ाऊंगा नहीं. बस इतना ही मैं कहना चाहूँगा कि इसका जो तात्पर्य है इस बुक का आगे के समय में इसको हम लोग को समझते हुए तमाम सारे लोग को बीच में जाने की ज़रूरत है और इसकी जो सच्चाई है उसको ले जाने की ज़रूरत है। बस इसी के साथ मैं अपनी बात खत्म करूँगा। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
Thank you very much, Rama. Very much, Naga. Can we now have Professor Hadgatha Sengupta?
He's one of those. Yeah, but these guys
He's a professor in mathematics, assistant professor of mathematics. He has the distinction of being recently suspended by a very people-friendly university. Professor Sengupta, you have 5 minutes.
Should I speak in English? Is that okay with everyone? I don't know Telugu. So. It's good to see a lot of friends, a lot of old friends in Namakan. Thanks for the invite. I'm here not just as an individual, not as a faculty member of University of Hyderabad, but I'm here as part of the struggle that has been going on in HCU. I will not try to represent the entire struggle because I can't. So some of what I say will be definitely coming from my personal background and my personal experience, but I'll try to talk mostly about the struggle and try to impress upon the point that the point where HCU and JNU and Gujarat and other such places, in my opinion, come together. In today's times. So what is basically happening is, I hope that most of us here sort of know some details of what really happened in HCU. In case we don't, I can just give you because I don't have much time, I'll give you a very brief outline of what really happened. So basically there was a screening of Muzaffarnagar Baki Hai, the documentary, which I think was screened here as well, right? Was it screened in Namakan? Yeah. So ASA, Ambedkar Students Association students, they had organized the screening of Muzaffarnagar Baki Hai in HCU in around August or July 2015, which was kind of a protest screening because a few days before that the same screening was disrupted in Delhi by ABVP students and RSS goons. So this was a protest screening, and then there were some remarks that were made by a certain ABVP activist who is also a student in HCU, describing the HCU activists as hooligans and gundas and so on, which sort of, for most of us who are not from that kind of a marginalized background, these are just usual curse words that we use in our day-to-day rhetoric, in the day-to-day conversation, so it may not sound very bad or very violent, but for someone who is coming from that kind of a community, whose main existence and whose main political act throughout the life has been to refute such kind of claims and to establish their identity and establish their self-respect as opposed to these kinds of brandings, it's a very it is a very violent attack on their existence, on their ideas. So therefore there was an altercation that happened, and that led to the entire that opened up the entire episode, and after which, because of interference because of sustained pressure and constant intimidation by the ruling political party, Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP ministers, all the way up to Smriti Irani, who is the MHRD minister. These 5 ASA students, including Rohit Vimala, were suspended, and it was not just a suspension, and that's where also sort of it's important to understand that we've always maintained that this is not just a removal suspension. This is in fact a social boycott, because if you look at the suspension order, it clearly says that they are not allowed in any kind of public space, they are not allowed in a municipal building, they are not allowed in I think the only, if I'm not, and in fact, I think I saw our registrar of our university in the audience, so sir, please correct me if I am wrong about anything. We'll not be like apparas, we'll take your comments if there are disagreements. But basically, so what happened was, they were prevented from access to all these social spaces, and they were asked to not participate in any kind of political activities in the campus and all that. So what then they did was, therefore, because they're not allowed in their hostels, and people like Rohit Vemula who were not given their pending scholarships which was pending for 7 months in the case of Rohit, they cannot obviously afford accommodation outside. It's not a question of affordability also, it's a question of insult, it's a question of dignity and so on. So what they decided was that they would leave the hostel and they would just like in villages you have the Dalit Vara or the Gadi Vara, and because this symbolizes this kind of social boycott in an academic space, so they put up a tent. They put up a sort of temporary shelter using very symbolically the sort of placards which talked about Ambedkar, Phule, and these kinds of people, and they termed it. It was actually Rohit's coinage. He is the one who called this place Veliwara, and that's where they stayed for a month. When all these activities were happening, when people were organizing meetings, people were trying to request the so-called vice chancellor to come and talk to the students and understand what they're trying to say, etc. And all of that was completely ignored, and all of that was met with a complete stonewall. And then after that, we all know what happened on 17 January night, 18 January early morning. So, and then after that, I think, we know what has been happening with the struggle and so on. So I'll not go into too much detail about it. Why I think it's important that we talk about HCU, JNU, Gujarat, Muzaffarnagar in the same breath is because, and this is one of the understandings that we got when some of us were traveling around several districts in Telangana about the struggle, and we were talking to people. Particularly when you go to places like Aramcheru or you go to places like Chinduru, the main, the feel that you get, what people are saying essentially, is that we can understand that Dalits or Adivasis in Bastar or someone in Northeast or people in Kashmir, we can understand that there it's bullets and there people are getting killed every day, like hundreds of Rohits are getting killed every day in Bastar, every day in Kashmir, every day in Northeast, everywhere across the country. Which is what happened in Gujarat also. But and then we know what kind of struggle it took. For instance, in the case of Karancheru massacre or Chinduru massacre, and then we saw how quote unquote justice was delivered, where they say where our courts say that no one killed the Dalits. I mean, so from that kind of a perspective, these people were asking us that we understand all that. We understand that because we are in the districts, because we are in the villages, because we are in the forests, we understand that this is a state machinery which is, whose main existence is dependent on the murder of people belonging to Dalit, Bahujan, working class, Adivasi, religious minorities. But what we don't understand is how can a similar kind of execution be carried out in a so-called central university in the presence of people who call themselves academicians, in the presence of, or in the middle of a city or mega city in which is kind of which is advertised as sort of one of the major centers of a wannabe superpower country, with all the media attention, in the middle of all the activist attention, in the middle of all the legal attention, how can this kind of an execution happen? And if we do not get justice in the case of Rohit Vemula, then what hope do we have to get justice in any of the other cases where so many Rohits are getting killed every day, every night, every moment? So that is the main that is the main anxiety, that is the main anger that people have, and that's where I think we need to understand, we need to juxtapose Gujarat with HCU. I'm not equating them at all. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying that it's not surprising what happened in Gujarat. It's not surprising what happened to Rohit, because essentially we live in a fascist society. We live in a Brahminical society, and the only kind of fascism that exists, in my opinion, in this country is Brahminical fascism. So, it's not surprising whatever is happening, but what is important to note in today's times, and I can't go into the details because there's not much time, but for various political, social, economic reasons, what is happening in today's times is that this kind of violence is finally leaving the usual, theater of the forests or the valleys or the Dalit Varas across our villages, and it is now coming and staring us at the face in our central esteemed institutions. So, and therefore many of us who earlier were just, basically peddling words of solidarity for these different struggles, for many of us now, the struggle is actually happening in our own backyard. And for the first time, perhaps, at least in our generation, I'm not talking about the 70s generation, I'm not talking about people who passed through the phase of emergency and so on. I'm talking about our generation. For our generation, I think this is for the first time that the struggle is staring at us right at our eyes in our own backyards, and it involves us. And therefore, it is extremely important for us to scrutinize ourselves to find out our role in this entire thing. So, in this entire episode of violence, in this entire paradigm of violence on which our society is based historically. So this is not just a struggle against Apparawa, this is not just a struggle against the HCU administration, this is not just a struggle against the registrar of the Central University of Hyderabad. This is a struggle against all of us, this is a struggle against myself also, like as a faculty, as someone coming from the privileged sections of this society. Our role in these institutions, in perpetrating the kind of institutional violence that we are seeing manifest in the case of Rohit Vemula, we all are responsible for it as part of, and I can say this, I don't say this generally in meetings on the streets, but given that I know the kind of social economic background from which Lamakan friends, people like me, where we come from, we are all responsible for this. And this is the time, because we are all faced with fascism, this is the time that we take a stand, and a lot of times it will be a stand against ourselves, and there, that's the real test, and not surprisingly, in my opinion, not just the University of Hyderabad administration, but in fact, the majority of the University of Hyderabad teaching community has failed that test, and for good reasons. Like, I'll just say one more thing, because Rama is here, and then I'll stop. So often during the movement, we are faced with this, we are asked this question, this comparison between JNU and HCU, what's happening in JNU. When Rama and all were attacked by the right-wing forces, we saw how the majority of the teachers, as bloc in JNU, they came out into the streets in support of the students and in support of democratic rights of the students to protest or raise slogans or whatever. So we are constantly being asked, why does the struggle for Rohit Vemula not have that kind of a support from the teachers in HCU? Why is it a polarized teaching community in HCU? And I think first, the main problem with this question is as if there are only 2 universities in this country. But keeping that aside, what I generally have been telling people is that it's not surprising because it's an anti-caste struggle, and if the majority of our teachers actually came in support of a struggle which is essentially a struggle for annihilation of caste, given the fact that the caste background and therefore the social background and a lot of times the socio-economic background of our teaching community, we all know how warped it is, we all know how reservations or how this kind of the representations are completely diverted or subverted in these kinds of recruitments, etc. We know where our teachers come from. So given their social location, it is not surprising.
I think I must thank you at this stage. I'm really sorry for interrupting you. Because Rana is waiting, and I think this event is more focused on her.
Right, sure.
Please.
Yeah.
Can you conclude?
No, so basically it is not surprising that the teaching community in HCU would be polarized, and if the entire teaching community actually came in support of the movement, then I would have thought that it is not a proper anti-caste movement. So I'll stop with that, but my appeal is that we should all question our own social locations and our role in this kind of institutional murder of people like Rohit Vemula. Jai Hind, Lal Singh.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, for the next 20 odd minutes, we'll have Rana speak about. Okay, she sacrificed 5 more minutes on the Gujarat files, the anatomy of a cover-up. After which she'll take questions from you, and the prerogative of choosing who will ask the questions would be arbitrarily mine.
That's fascism.
Learn to live with it in small doses first. So, and for those of you who feel a little uncomfortable, I could also introduce her as Maithili Tyagi for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to look into this window of the same place, Sabarmati ki Sant to the Chai Wala. Is this the progress? Is this India's tryst with destiny? Over to Rana Ayub.
Adab Hyderabad and Namaskaram. Actually, I've been a bit tired of speaking, to be very honest, which is why I deducted the 5 minutes. For the last 1 month I've been speaking, but speak I must, because that's all I have to bring the truth to all of you. It took me about 5 years to get the book out. I might as well speak for another 6 months to ensure that all of you hear and read it as much as possible. I don't know, what do I say? Some of you must have read the book. Some of you might be privy to the content of the book. It's been an arduous process. I mean, the other day I went to my shrink after the book launch and I said, am I allowed to cry now? He said, not yet, you have another month to cry. But now you have to ensure that the courts ask you for the tapes of this conversation. The reason why I speak is because I see all of you in huge numbers today promising to me that there's still hope for justice, there's a lot of optimism, that a percent of a minority of fascists, I would say, because I still believe and I choose to believe that India is a justice-loving country, and I continue to believe that, despite having seen it from closest quarters, right from the Mumbai riots to the Gujarat riots. I mean, I'm a child of the Mumbai riots. I mean, I'm born and brought up in Mumbai, so I know what transpired. My parents sent me and my sister across to an unknown place for 2 months where we did not have any telephonic conversation with the family. And one fine day we had a poster. I mean, my father was a government school teacher who belonged to a socialist family, and he worked with the Blitz, very well-known journalist, government school teacher, the only Muslim family in a cosmopolitan Hindu society, and one fine day on 6 December 1992 we all became Muslims. Because a poster which read Chalo Ayodhya 6 December was stuck right in the middle of our house, and acid bottles thrown inside. And my mother's closest friend came to her that morning and said, Didi, Ayodhya se bhini bhini khushbu aa rahi hai, lagta hai masjid toot chuki hai. This is not, I'm not blaming auntie. I'm blaming the people who we have elected to power. I would want to us to introspect, because Modi and the likes of Amit Shah didn't come to power just like that. They came in power with a democratically elected setup. We voted them to power. So, you know, when we kind of lament the fact that extrajudicial killings or the practice of Hindutva or fascism is being practiced, we have to look inward somewhere that, you know, we voted them to power, so let's also look inwards. Let's point a finger towards our own self. Where have we come in as a society? Gujarat Files is a result of an 8-month-long undercover investigation, which I did right after, at the age of 26, I sent the country's first Home Minister Amit Shah behind bars in 2010 on charges of murder and conspiracy. I was only 26 then, and infamously known as Mr. Ayub. Nobody thought that a girl would do that. Till 2013, I'll only get emails and letters as Mr. Ayub. Fortunately for me, it allowed me to go undercover. So nobody could figure that it was a girl who was actually Rana Ayub. I sent him behind bars, and I knew that this was just the tip of the iceberg, that Amit Shah, the man who the Supreme Court of India, in its order, has called a murderer and a conspirator, who is, unfortunately, and I have no issues saying this right now, is the president of the ruling party in this country, and we are witness to this. He was responsible for the murder of innocents, and those innocents on whose murder, on whose bodies Mr. Narendra Modi would take press conferences and call himself a Hindu Hriday Samrat who was under attack from Fidaeens. This book is for that very reason, because reams have been written about the book, but I do believe that most of us, irrespective of whether justice happens or not, we have to keep talking, we have to keep doing the work that we are doing. The fourth estate, which I myself so proudly believe I'm a part of, has to keep doing its work. 1 month since the publication of this book, not a single television news channel has touched it. I think they have developed amnesia, partial amnesia, because they all love talking about Vijay Mallya and black money, but they can't see fascism back in the country. Having said that, I'm fortunate that most of the print media, online media, has given glorifying reviews to the book. I've got news reports coming in each day, so that's very, very heartening and promising. Gujarat Files is also a result of mainstream media censorship. I did this investigation. I went incognito in 2010 July as Maithili Tyagi, a student of the American Film Institute Conservatory, an American filmmaker who sported a bandana. You know, any American who speaks with an accent is very much acceptable in Ahmedabad. Anybody who's familiar with Gujarat will know that. Plus the fact that my father was an RSS worker and he was a Sanskrit professor came in very handy. I mean, Maithili's father, to be precise. I had a French accomplice who was an intern at Tehelka who came along. There was somebody from Greenland who also became a cinematographer. And thus started this journey of filmmaking of Gujarat, or the vibrant Gujarat. And I finished this investigation in 2011, only to be told by Tehelka that it could not publish this. After which, every publication whose books you buy each day has been approached with this manuscript. The biggest publication house in this country had a contract with me for 1 year, and suddenly one fine day in 2014 January, the same year that Modi was supposed to come to power, they stopped taking my phone calls. No phones, no messages. For a month I went on enduring this. I thought, okay, perhaps my editor must be really busy. After about a month, I tried a trick. I sent them a mail, I'm withdrawing my book. Within 2 minutes came a response, please go ahead. So the trick worked wonders. They wanted to do it, they wanted me to do it. I went to every possible editor in this country, and no editor in this country can claim that I have not spoken to them about these transcripts. Some cited political pressure, some cited, oh, it's the work of Tehelka, we can't carry it. Some cited that sting operation wasn't exactly the ideal form of journalism. You know, you always have reasons. When you don't want to do something, there are 1,000 reasons. Like my editors recently said, oh, the book did not fit the editorial standards of Tehelka. In 4 weeks, I have sold 30,000 copies that say something about the editorial standard of this country. And this is it. I mean, this is what keeps me going. This is what keeps me talking so much all the time to all of you. I'm visiting one city each day. And this is what keeps me going, to the fact that you guys really believe in the work that I'm doing. You guys still believe, a part of you. At least 10% of India still believes that what Narendra Modi and Amit Shah did in Gujarat was against humanity, was against the very grain of humanity, was injustice. And that's what keeps me going. There is a famous sher by Ahmed Faraz in Pakistan. He said it for dictator Zia at that point of time, General Zia. And he said it, the poem was aptly titled Muhasara. It was in English translated The Siege. It was when General Zia tried to censor the mainstream media in Pakistan. And I don't know how many of you here are familiar with Urdu, but the last 4 lines went like this. मैं कट गिरों के सलामत रहूं ये यकीन है मुझे कि हिसारे सितम कोई तो गिराएगा तमाम उम्र की इज़ा नसीबियों की कसम मेरे कलम का सफर आएगा ना जाएगा. These are the last 4 lines of the book. In the 8 months of investigation, I stung about 8 top officers, which included the Principal Secretary, Home Secretary, ATS Chief, Commissioner of Police, Deputy General of Police, Maya Kundani, who oiled my hair, of course, Narendra Modi, who told me about his fascination for Barack Obama and how he wanted to be like Barack Obama one day. And now you see him shaking hands with Barack Obama, so his dreams do come true. And various other officers, of course. But I would want to read a small part from of my conversation with then ATS Chief Rajan Priyadarshi. And it has great deal of insight in it. For all those who have read it might know what it includes, but I'll just read a small part of it. It says, so I ask, your CM Narendra Modi is very popular here in Gujarat. Answer, yes, he fools everybody and people get fooled. Question, in that case, as additional DJ, you would have had a tough time walking under him. Answer, they never had the guts to force me to do anything illegal. Question, lawlessness is rampant here, no? Hardly any officers are upright. Answer, there are very few of them. This man, Narendra Modi, has been responsible for killing Muslims across the street. Question, Acha, I hear that the cops also toed the line of the government. Answer, All of them, like this PC Pandit, the commissioner. It all happened in their presence. Question. Most of the officers say that they have been implicated wrongly. Answer. What wrongly? They have done it, which is why they are now going behind bars. They killed a young girl in an encounter. Question. Really? Answer. Haha. They called her Lashkar terrorist. She was from Mumra. The story created was she was a terrorist who came to Gujarat to kill Narendra Modi. Question. And it's false? Answer. Yes, it's false. This is the ATS chief and the girl in concern is Ishrat Jahan. The same Ishrat Jahan who now is being demonized on television news channels every day for the last 10 years. One day we give her a clean chit, the other day we call her a terrorist who was going around with 5 men. The implication is very strong, mind you. What was a single girl doing with 5 men in the middle of the night? I mean, irrespective whether she was a terrorist or not, she ought to be a girl of horrible character. And that's a stream of thought which goes across the book. You have Geeta Jowhary who says about Kausar B, who was Sohrabudeen's wife, who was raped, sedated and killed by Gujarat cops. She said, well, she was living in with that man. Which roughly translates into she can be raped, sedated and killed and thrown into the Narmada like she was. This is the IG of police Rajkot saying this. Another part in which the Home Secretary of Gujarat speaks to me as Maithili Tyagi. I ask him, but why has the CM been CM Mr. Narendra Modi? We're talking about 2010. But why has the CM been so much in the line of fire? Is it because he's with the BJP? Answer, no. Because he supported the BHP during the time of the riots. He did it to get the Hindu votes, which he did. He did what he wanted to do, and that happened. Question, but he asked people to go slow. Answer, he would not say that in a meeting. He would say that to his men. He would convey to the VHP and then to officers like Tandon and other officers and the VHP. And as an officer, you can choose to toe the line. This is the Home Secretary of Gujarat who in front of the Nanavati Commission told the Nanavati Commission, I don't remember. I don't remember what happened at that point of time. This was the same man who developed amnesia in front of the Nanavati Commission. Further ahead he says, you would have had a tough time to work under Narendra Modi. Answer, they never had the guts to tell me to do anything wrong. Question, was the government's ire directed against you? Answer, yes, of course. I said give me orders in paper, whatever it is. See, all the officers at lower levels, everybody has the right to arrest those politicians indulging in such crimes. But most of them have come under political pressure and compromise. That's what happened during the riots. On a later occasion, he says that Praveen Togadia, when he took this rally in Gujarat around the time of Kothra train burning, and Mr. Narendra Modi himself took the permission of bringing the bodies to Gujarat, despite suggestion by the Home Secretary and Chief Secretary to not bring the bodies, as it would flare up the tension in Gujarat. He goes on to say in this book, on record, it was Narendra Modi's decision. He further goes on to say that he had said categorically to Mr. Modi that permission should not be given to Praveen Togadia to hold a rally, and Mr. Modi categorically asked him to give permission. If this is not evidence, I need to know what is evidence in this country. In this country where a yes or no is accepted as evidence, why is it that these many tapes and transcripts of conversations are not accepted by evidence? I'm surprised, I'm stunned. 1 month since this book launch and the SIT, the Special Investigative Team, investigated the Gujarat encounters and the Gujarat riots and the fake encounters, has not even had the courtesy to give me a phone call to ask if Maithili Tyagi or Rana Ayub even exists. And what do I say? The end of the chapter is, let me just also add one thing. The book is not about Muslims. The last chapter of the book is about RSS Pracharak Haren Pandya, who played an active role during Gujarat riots, who according to his father died about a few years ago, who till his last breath said that his son was killed by Narendra Modi and Amit Shah, the Home Minister. I would not want to pass judgment on that because we have courts to decide on that. But the investigating officer in this case in the last chapter says that the man who killed Haren Pandya was in their custody before they let him out to kill Haren Pandya, and the CBI acted at the behest of Narendra Modi and LK Advani. If the investigating officer who signs the FIR is not evidence enough, I need to know what is evidence. I need to know why is Times Now not screaming on the top of its voice and talking about this investigation. I need to know what this silence about. So people ask me, a reviewer wrote the other day in Business Standard that Rana, you was using the same practice as Narendra Modi of crying censorship. I didn't know what to say. Perhaps censorship and its meaning needs to be redefined. I guess my book is the most discussed topic in this country. I guess the Prime Minister is holding a meeting and 7 RC are discussing this book. I'm sure they are, but certainly not in the public eye. That's what we need to ask, and that's why I'm here. I'm here not just to give you a lecture. I'm here not just to read out from the book. I'm here to. I'm not saying I'm the most upright person in the universe. I'm not. I've had many flaws, but I'm here to talk as somebody who considers herself justice loving and who has had bouts of nervous disorders when the book was not published. I'm here to seek your support in the process of justice, and all I want from you is to raise a voice. All I want you to do is support this book, read the book, and ask tough questions, and just do not be complacent and sit in your living rooms and watch television news and abuse Arnab Goswami. No, it's not taking us anywhere. The easiest thing is to sit in your living rooms and criticize politicians. The toughest thing is to ask questions and make yourself heard. That's the only purpose behind self-publishing this book, and still to clear the debt and the home loan, and the book loan that I took to publish this book. Inshallah, I'll be able to recover it in the next few months because of your support and because we have sold 30,000 copies so far. But the larger purpose is for this book to reach every household, for the content of this book to register in your hearts and minds, and ask yourself the question when you go to the ballot, when you go to cast your vote in the next election. Thank you.
Please be seated, all of you, please be seated.
Strong, very, very strong public opinion where people talk about it and ask for things to happen, and the other is judiciary. And while 30,000 copies is a great number to have for a country as large as ours, it still hasn't become a talking point in public discourse, and that's worrisome. Well, I have a small second question. That white man in your book played an important role, and he came into your life by accident, right? What would have happened if he had not been there?
I'd have got another white man.
You would have got one, because you're not designed for
white man in the country. Coming to the first part of your question, why is the mainstream television media not picking it? I'm not a part of it, sir. Honestly, I do not know what transpires in newsrooms. I can only hope that better sense prevails. And
Is it fear, or is it, being in this so-called?
I think I'd be slaughtered by my community tomorrow by representing them and still speaking against them. But yes, there is a fear. Of course, there is a fear. There is a self-censorship more than censorship. You know, as you used to say during the emergency, when asked to bend, they crawled, and we have not even been asked to bend, and we are prostrating. So it's not just fear; it's also this self-censorship mode that we are in. I hope we get out of it. I hope we get out of this fear syndrome and confront. These are just human beings. These are just another political figures. We have seen worse in the past, and we can deal with these the alleged criminals also. Sorry, I have to be very careful with my terminology. Sorry, I don't remember the second part of your question. Is there anything else left to be answered? The white man can answer it.
I just wanted to ask you one question. I come from Maharashtra, and in the light of the Dabholkar, Pansare and Kalburgi murders, in which the HP and other people, all their holy organizations are very strongly involved. I also have seen you participating in a TV discussion where they attacked you. So, are you, and I really wish that you take up something of this kind, what you've done about the Gujarat files, you take up something of this kind, because in the Goa ashram, and there is a whole lot of secrecy, mystery, and all kinds of criminal things that are happening there. Nobody is coming forward and talking about it as you have done about the Gujarat files. Is it on your agenda?
You missed a point. I went undercover in this Nagpur.
Yeah, you did. But that was only you. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I did my bit. But yes, I will continue to speak about
because
it.
Because now that the new evidence is coming
yes,
up,
I gave an interview to Los Angeles Times just about 2 days ago. I'm trying to create a buzz about it. I'm speaking as much as possible. I've written articles, but then you have to also understand that I'm not employed by any news organization.
Of course, yes.
Yes. Also now I'm a pariah I don't think any news organization will touch me now.
So, but I really wish to God that you did it.
more.
I'll do as much as possible. I have written, in fact, the day Dabholkar sir was murdered, I got an interview from Prithviraj Chauhan when he said on the record that the thought which killed Gandhi is the same thought which killed Dabholkar. So to get an interview like that on day one was a brave attempt, was a brave thing by not just Prithviraj Chauhan but also the organization which carried it. I've been consistently reporting on it, but there is only so much that one person can do. But let me tell you, let me assure you that most of the mainstream media is being proactively covering this case, be it Dabholkar, Pansari or Sanatan Sanstha. In fact, when the Goa blast took place and the first time Sanatan Sanstha's role was established, the entire media had parked itself outside the Goa headquarters. So to give them credit, they have been very consistent in their coverage of Sanatan Sanstha.
Yes.
I've read the book, Rana. I've read the book and I think it's investigative reportage at its very best, and I'd like to differ when people say that 30,000 is a small number. I think it's a phenomenal number considering that the book's been out only for the last 30 days and people don't know about the existence of the book. Now my question is very simple, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Now the criticism of Shoma and Tarun against you is that you've said that you've been used as a guinea pig. Now the criticism is that, had you been used as a guinea pig, why didn't Rana just walk out? Why did she stick to us for such a long period of time? Why is she making this noise now? And I've read a review of Manoj Mitra today when he states that had Shoma and Tarun given you this opportunity, you would have had a second meeting with Narendra Modi and perhaps it would have been a different story altogether.
I answered that bit about my not meeting Narendra Modi earlier. I mean, I was born by an organization. You have to also understand that there were many stories about Ishrat Jahan and the other fake encounters on whom I had the papers and nobody was willing to publish them. I needed a platform. You have to understand the kind of journalism I was doing, I needed a platform. Secondly, Tehelka kept on reassuring me every 3 or 6 months that at some point they will relook into the investigation. Thirdly, the tapes were not mine, the tapes were their property. I could not have walked out of the Tehelka office and given it to somebody. They would have thrown me behind bars because they were then powerful. I left the organization in 2013 on ethical issues, and fortunately for me, because Tehelka was in trouble because of another case, they did not ask me for the tapes, so I was saved. So it's very opportunistic, but yeah, that's how it is. So that's the answer to this question.
Sarita, your next question.
Yeah, we can do a one-to-one also later.
Four if
Yeah.
Are we done?
do you have a blog?
I used to have a blog and I deleted it because there's too much nastiness on it. So I'm planning to start a website of my own because I think that's the best way for most journalists now to print their own thoughts. And that's as independent can be. So I'm planning to start my own website. Sarita, there's nobody you can ask the question.
See, you mentioned that about 35 to 65,000 phones were being monitored at one point of time in Gujarat. Has it occurred to you that that's happening in Delhi also? One of the reasons why the media might not be reporting what it is reporting, number one. Number two, has it occurred to you that the SR tapes might be, given the time frames, might in some way be related to this case? Because some of the...
Now I know where the question is coming from.
Right?
Okay, so to put it in a nutshell, the SR tapes have not just come out of nowhere. The SR tapes have been lying around with the media. In fact, every possible tape that you should see is in the hands of the media.
You have a copy.
I don't know. यार एक केस से निकलने दो फिर दूसरे पे जाऊंगी ना. In fact, my next book is on the black money trail. So it will again, I think, will be a self-published endeavor because I don't think any publication house will touch it. So whatever is left unsaid now will be said in the book with the papers. Yeah.
Yes. And now we worry about your safety even more.
From the corporate sharks, you mean?
Actually, my question is not really important, so I want to ask
No,
it
sir.
at the end.
That's the best way.
No, actually, there was an episode you were asked to come to AZ Road by some woman.
Usha Rada.
Yeah, forgot him. So I would have thought. No, I think that at the time your voice must be very shaken. So
I still am shaking because of that. No, honestly, I do, because at that point of time I almost thought that I would be killed, because they had called me on a deserted highway and I was in an auto, and they were about a dozen cops and one lady with revolvers, and I was the only one with them, and I said, this is it. So I sent Mike, my Goda colleague, a message, ki boss, if something happens, please inform my family and Tehelka.
So actually she is a policewoman. So she didn't have any doubt on you.
Clearly she did not, which is why she was entertaining me for so long.
Okay. And also one more question. And also there is one more episode that your laptop was such. I mean, when you are in meeting.
When I just about started the investigation, so anybody who, this is standard practice. So I mean, I was a little more shana, as you call it in the Bombay term. So I had sanitized my laptop. I had a Lord Krishna thing on my laptop, on my screen. I had the shlokas. I had MV Kamat's articles on Narendra Modi on my desktop. I had done my homework, so I was a little careful then.
Yes, so who could have ordered that to such your
I wish I knew, yaar. मैं सीधे जाके थप्पड़ लगा के आती नहीं, I really
in
don't.
spite of that, in spite of that, you continued your investigation. That is.
I had to, because this is right in the beginning, and I knew that this is standard practice, and they were trying to test exactly where was I coming from. They could not really place faith in a Firang just because I had a Firangi along with me. I mean, I could have worn a bandana and grey lenses, but at the end of the day, I was still an Indian woman who knew facts about Gujarat. So they did do a fact check, and there were a couple of, I could see for a few days that a car would follow me wherever I went, but that only lasted for a few days before they were assured of the fact that I was only a filmmaker, because I would hang out with every possible filmmaker. I would hang out with the Firangs, drink chai, take photographs, hang out on the sets of Hitu and Naresh Kanodia, the filmmakers. For 2 months, you have to understand, for 2 months I was accompanying filmmakers in Gujarat and shooting item numbers.
And one last question, sorry. And sorry, one last question. And has any one of them interacted to you later? I mean,
surprisingly not. I would love to have a phone call from them, but none of them have called me. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just a doubt and then a question. Sorry. Wouldn't they have checked with the university you claim to come from? Because you were working with the interviewing the
American Film Institute
yes.
Unfortunately, they did not check.
Fortunately.
Fortunately, yeah. But I had a college iCard. I had my connections there. I had a number there, so if anybody would call them, they would verify the fact that Anna Yu was indeed a Film Institute student. See, when you go for an investigation, you have everything sorted, including your PAN card, your iCard, and professors you had co-opted. So.
Last question, sorry. Where do we see you in the media world now? Are you considering television? And is there any equation that you have with
You mean a
Barka?
reality show?
No, anything. No, not really. How about Barka? Do you have any? What's your?
No, I have no comments about my fellow media. I think
Tell us about that video that you were sharing, about the media thing. Is it too early to share about that? The independent thing?
The independent media venture, which should happen sometime soon, but it will be without any sponsorship from corporates, but we are working on it. And there are a few of us like-minded individuals who are working on this concept of starting our own independent media house, but wishful thinking, we don't know how far can we go without, and we are very clear on the fact that we do not want any sponsorship in this, because we do not want any interference by any political or capitalist in our editorial decision making. So if it happens, it will be a no profit, no loss venture, and if like-minded people come together with just about 50,000 salary, then and if anyone of you know of the editors, please pass them on to us. We'll be more than happy to have them on board. But that's again something which should happen in a year or two. I mean, my immediate task is to promote the book as much as possible. I'm traveling with the book extensively. I'm only covering the metropolitan cities for now, but I have to infiltrate the villages of this country with a book, so I'm going to do that as soon as possible with various languages, translations. So that's on the cards right now.
You just saw the shower that we gave you as a thank you for coming to Lanka.
Thank you so much,
My
gratitude.
pleasure. And are you planning to release the item number videos at any point?
Trust me, they're so obscene.
You know what you must tell her?
Nothing is
You
too
know,
obscene, Rana.
filmmaker, producer who can buy it from you.
Buy the rights from me. Buy
Done.
the rights from me.
Done. And then we'll co-sponsor the Black Money book.
Perfect.
Yeah?
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of us let's see how many of us will put our money where our conscience is. This book, Gujarat Files, is for sale out there. It's sold at the cost of 300 rupees. 300 for a copy of a person's life experience. She put everything that life had at stake. Can we just take out 300 rupees in exchange for that? I request each one of you to do a little bit of conscious cleansing. Buy a copy of the book. We may help her pay back a part of her 5 lakh debt. Anyone who's willing to pay more than that is free to pay that money there and take as many books as they want. Thank you very much for being with us, Rana. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been nice having all of you here. It's a reiteration of Rana's hope that all is not lost. It's also a reiteration of the hope that India has survived Ghazni, India will survive the others. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note of hope and a word of congratulations, with Hyderabad taking its hats off to our own Annie Frank. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
And thank you all so much for being here for me and for this book. Thank you.
Yeah, put up your hands and hopefully some of you will get a chance to be heard. Now, when I say question, it's a single sentence. It ends with a question mark. Opinions we treasure, but for the present refrigerated. Subba Reddy, can we start with the gentleman right under the mic, because I saw his hand go up first. Just 1 minute before you ask. Yes.
Rana, firstly, amazing book. I read around 50 pages of it.
Question.
How would you deal with the trolls, because they do get really verbally violent online?
Well, I think now they've begun to humor me. So when I have nothing else to do, I go on my interactions page. And they are so cliched. They call me a prostitute every day. They abuse me. I wonder if they can get a little novel in their ideas and just try to do something else to do for a living. And honestly, I don't blame them. They're a paid syndicate. They're paid to do this job, so I don't really blame them. They're not against Rana, you personally. They're against the person and her ideology and her quest for justice, so I just leave them at that.
Two questions. I'll try and keep them one sentence. Number one, how do we buy the book if we can't come to a location where you're actually selling it?
It's right here.
Yeah. Do you have any...
That's Subba Reddy. He will be the right person.
I couldn't find it on Amazon. Anyway, that is one. The other thing is, what is the picture about?
It was designed by somebody who has known me since college. She's a photographer and art designer. And it has, according to her, it has many meanings. And I asked her to... I told her that I have to be either a fly on the wall or it has to be something dark. So the lizard also implies something very slimy. A powerful person is trying to eat the fly. It also implies that a lizard is in search of the truth, is trying to get into this dark thing inside. She does not know what lies inside. It's dark, she knows that, but she does not know what lies ahead. There are many, it has many meanings. It's the way you perceive it.
Yeah, Sarita?
Rana, I have 2 or 3
quick questions. Yeah, I know where she is.
Hey, guys, can you...
Yeah, you don't have to see you, Sarita.
Can I stand there? And everyone will make things easier, right?
I can just stand.
No, I'll stand.
I have two or three very specific questions.
Ask one, Sarita.
I will make it very quick. They'll take 30 seconds. One, do you have an answer on why Surabhi was killed, not how he was killed? Two, there is a mention in your notebook of a 40 or 100 odd calls made by a journalist to Banjara or to Amit Shah. There is a mention of it. I'm sorry, I can't reach the page in your book.
They mentioned Amit Shah calling up Vanzara and the other people.
No, and of a journalist calling, of a call from journalist. I will forward the link to you. Okay, who was this journalist? And 3, the call records that you're talking of. Now, there is a list that is published in Tehelka already, which Tehelka has given to the Supreme Court. Other than that, are there any other call records that Tehelka or you are sitting on that can be accessed by anybody in the public domain, which is already out there, or they other than the public domain call records that somebody is sitting on?
When I first got the call records, they were in the form of a CD, a raw data, so I had to basically cull out the stuff. I got them in the middle of the night, at 3 in the night at a dargah, where a topmost officer from Gujarat handed it to me. That was the first time I wrote the Amit Shah story, in which I'm not sure if there's a journalist who has called him, but see, as a matter of protocol, Amit Shah was a junior minister of state, so I don't think 100 calls would have been made by a journalist on a specific day. The calls were made around the same time as the encounter. So we were looking at the time of encounter. So when Sohrabuddin was killed, when Kausar B was killed, his wife was killed 2 days later after he was killed, and her body, and she was raped, incinerated, and her ashes were thrown off. Around the same time that this was happening, Amit Shah, the Home Minister, and the CD was given by me to the Supreme Court, which asked for the evidence. There was a trail. In a span of 2 days, he made 170 calls to a junior officer. Home Minister would never speak, and the junior officer was with Sohrabuddin at that point of time. So that's the trail of call records which the Supreme Court has accepted as evidence.
That's Pandya.
Sorry?
That's Pandya.
Pandian, Banzai, there is a long list of officers. It's not just Pandian, there are about 8 officers. So I think all the call records have been handed over to the Supreme Court. What has not been handed the Supreme Court has been handed over to the CBI, because at the end of the day, I do not have the apparatus to kind of cull every bit of record. I don't have the MTNL or BSNL directory to match the phone numbers, which is why the phone call records have been handed over to the CBI.
We'll go up the balcony.
You said you'll make the files public. You haven't made it yet.
Well, you get me a lawyer, I'll certainly make the files public. But see, it's very easy to say that why don't you make the files public? It's easier said than done, because the moment I do that, I'm standing as a free person here. Tomorrow you won't see me, because there will be 1,000 cases that will be slapped against me, including criminal intimidation, criminal trespassing, etc. The logical way out of this is, first the SIT should ask Tehelka, which is the rightful owner of the tape, to hand over the tape. There is a protocol in which things are to be followed. The lawyer, the SIT or the court takes suo moto, notice of this and asks Tehelka, which is the original owner of this tape. If I hand over the tapes to the SIT, I don't know what happens of it. I'm an independent journalist. I don't have the apparatus of me to understand or figure where does the tape go next. There has to be an independent inquiry into this, and then I will hand over the tapes. It's easier to put it on YouTube. It will take me just about 2 minutes to put it on YouTube. But where will it lead? It will lead to audiences watching it and the TRPs increasing. That happens day in, day out. That's not the purpose of the tapes. So I'm not doing that yet. But the moment the SIT comes in, I want them to ask Tehelka for the tapes, and of course I have a copy. I'll be more than happy. The moment SIT comes in, the next minute they have the tapes with them. So there's no hesitation on my part to hand it over to them.
Yes, please.
One of my questions have been answered. You said you had a, sorry, I've only been through halfway through your book, but I understand that you did have a meeting with Modi, right? Why didn't you continue later, independently? I understand that Tehelka, took its hands off. Was it financial problems, or you were so close, you could have gone further?
You're working with an organization, you cannot, when you have done an entire sting operation for them, you're legally bound by a contract. And when the editor says no, and if I go and meet Modi, what if the editor calls up Narendra Modi and says somebody is going to come and sting you? There are 1,000 probabilities which can arise. A 26-year-old has a lot on her platter to think about, and it was the easiest thing for me to go and sting Narendra Modi again. It was a huge desire to do that. I'd have loved to have him. He invited me the following Sunday for a lunch, and I was itching to go for the lunch, and Tarun and Shoma said, come back, you're not going back again. As a 26-year-old who has had about 14 hours of tape in her custody, which she has handed over to Tehelka, she cannot let go all of that for one meeting with Narendra Modi. That would have been very promising, but I really could not. That's a call you have to take.
Next question to the lady here.
So
one question was certainly that why did you continue, go to that meeting with Bowser? But I do have one more question on the publishing of the book. Couldn't you look at options of crowdfunding or, some options of getting this book much earlier? Because it would have had certainly a great impact on 2014 elections. Do you think that this delay has really, you have lost an opportunity to send the guy, the Sahib, behind the bars?
In 2014 April, 3 mainstream political parties told me, I don't want to name them, but 3 mainstream political parties in India said that they knew that the book was pulp and they wanted to take a press conference with me. But trust me, all of you sitting here, if I had done this in 2014, would have accused me of political motivation of playing in the hands of the Congress. Mind you, this was not a political work. Sorry, no. 2007, Tehelka did a sting operation on Babu Bajrangi. Immediately after, when Narendra Modi won the election, there were 2 allegations against Tehelka. One, it was a Congress-funded allegation. Second, that the BJP did it. At the end of the day, there was no justice. We have seen it all. I mean, I come from an organization where sting operation is considered its forte. And let me tell you that the publication with whom I had a contract pulled out of the contract in 2014. In 2014 Jan, I went to the largest circulating newspaper in the country saying, these are the transcripts, publish them if the book is not to be published. They said, we do not believe in the concept of sting. I went to 12 newspapers across the country, every possible news channel, they said, we do not believe in the concept of a sting operation. Now, if I had taken a press conference with the Congress or the Aam Aadmi Party, you know what would have happened to the subject, the matter on hand, the tapes on hand. Political motivation would have been the first charge leveled against it without even looking at it in an independent manner. You have to understand that when an independent journalist, when a journalist who has conducted a sting operation, God forbid, I would not want any journalist to go undercover. After my experience, I would not want anyone to go undercover. You have to understand the perils and the psychological and the kind of strategy that person has to play, especially when he or she is a lone soldier. I remember a political party called me to say, take a press conference, but if Modi comes to power, despite these tapes in May, we do not assure you any protection. You tell me, if I had published this in April 2014, May 2014, and Modi would still have come to power, you would not have been able to see me now. I would have been behind bars then and there. That there are reasons. There are reasons that the book does not get published at a time like this. For instance, I was asked to publish this book before Bihar elections. I did not want to do that. You have to understand it's not a political book. It is a journalistic effort. And this book, this book was supposed to be published on the 12th of May. I said, no, there are 5 states going to polls. This is the last phase of polling. I am not going to give them even one opportunity to label this as a work of a political nexus. Till date, 1 month since the publication of this book, not one political party, for that matter, not a single member of the BJP has made any allegation against me. None of the officers who I have stung have actually come out to say that no, we didn't meet her or no, we didn't say this to her. That's because I've stuck by the truth in the last 6 years. I've stuck by my journalistic principles in the last 6 years and not been co-opted by any political party.
Mr. Basu.
Hi Rana, I am Bhaskar, senior journalist. As senior journalist, I am telling you, you are inspiration to all senior and junior journalists,
Thank you so much,
intellectuals and all the teachers and who are appropriated by the state. In Telugu media also, there is no reviews of interviews or any news items of your book in all the mainstream Telugu media. I am the only person who wrote in left media. I gave you copy, I gave you printout copy. Telugu media also blocked your book. That I am informing you. All the mainstream Telugu media, all the people knows. I worked in the largest circulated Telugu newspaper in India, in Andhra Pradesh. Next question is to bring justice bandwagon to work आगे justice आपको आगे लेने जाने के लिए एक बिल डाल के सुप्रीम कोर्ट को आपके सुप्रीम कोर्ट को दिया तो जस्टिस होता है because all the cases against Modi and Amit Shah
to answer to your first
why
comment,
don't
please,
you do that?
If it makes you feel any better, I was in Gujarat 4 days ago and the journalist said, but what's new in this? We all knew this. I said, why didn't you talk about this all this while then? They said, we were in all the off-record conversations, officers would tell us. I said, in that case, the fact that it's been 1 month since my book is out and you guys have not even written a sentence that goes to say something. So don't worry, this is not, in case the Telugu newspapers have not covered it, Gujarati newspapers are not far behind. In fact, they should have been taking the lead in publishing contents of the book. They have not. I guess it's a turf war that an outsider has come and covered something that we have all known. And trust me, there's nothing in this book where journalists in this country, mainstream journalists, have not known of the record. All of us knew. It's just that for the first time we have it from the horse's mouth. Second thing about the PIL, yes, we are considering that as an option. I have a human rights activist turned lawyer who's approached me for this. Another week or so, and if there is no action by the SIT, we are trying as much as possible, then I will certainly knock the doors of the Supreme Court.
Two things, Rana, before you take the next question. I think Sarita has a feeling you've not answered her question on who killed.
So, Rabhuti, I think the Supreme Court has already answered that bit. The Supreme Court, it said there's a larger conspiracy which needs to be investigated. Now there are various links that come to it. One, whether he was a conduit for Chudasama and Amit Shah in the money laundering business, or whether he was involved in the Hareen Pandya murder. There are various conspiracies. As yet, the Supreme Court, we have to blame the CBI. It has been investigating this case since 2010, and the case has not reached its logical conclusion. So why I can give you my hunch, but on a public forum, I think it will be extremely inappropriate considering the matter is sub judice. So it will be, this is something that we can discuss later at some point.
Mohammed, you had a question?
No, I have.
Go ahead.
Very quickly, Rana from Old Hyderabad, I congratulate you for your courageous work. And I have a question. Your book talks about the institutional bias, police bias, and the white beard man and black beard man are now in Delhi. Do you think that the legacy of the institutional bias have been stripped to Delhi now?
See what happened yesterday, Times of India wrote a story that Rana Ayub's book on Gujarat files, where she talks about a use and throw policy, is now being practiced in Delhi when Narendra Modi uses Subramaniam Swamy to attack Raghuram Rajan and then disposes him off. I don't know if that is a tacit agreement. Subramaniam Swamy has done is grudgingly agreed to that kind of. But yes, I do see that happening, and trust me, it's not a Gujarat-related phenomena itself. You see that in Uttar Pradesh, you see that in Manipur, where fake encounters are the norm of the day. In this particular case, the reason why fake encounters are important and need to be spoken about is because in no other state, after a fake encounter, did a chief minister take a press conference saying, okay, these are the people whose bodies you see here are the people who are out to attack me. Nobody tried to build a political career out of dead bodies. This was Gujarat being an exception. So that was the Gujarat model that I was speaking about in the book. And the bias, yes, as most of the officers who are Dalits will say that we have been used and thrown. The Brahmin will not shoot at or kill the bodies or rape the woman. It was led to the Dalit and the lower caste who will do the dirty work. Not that Brahmins don't do that, but but they are manipulated. Dalits are manipulated in various cross-section of the dispensation. Yeah.
1 minute. There's a question up from there.
Hi, Rana. I really want to read your book, but I have a quick question about what you were saying earlier about Ishrat Jahan. You said you interviewed a police officer, and he said that Ishrat Jahan is definitely not a terrorist. And what do you think about these recent articles that come out about David Headley, who says that she was a terrorist, and it's like...
David Headley was given a KBC-like question. So David Headley picked up the most familiar name out of it.
It was done fast forward, it's not a recent thing, it was the case that had been released much earlier.
See that, Ishrat Jahan, that encounter...
When the Congress was in government.
I don't make any differentiation between the Congress and the BJP. For me, both are the same. I don't seem to understand why are we making a differentiation. Okay, why Ishrat Jahan was an innocent earlier and not now? I'm sorry. As I maintain this. The Congress is as communal as the BJP with just a veneer of secularism like this for you guys to vote for them. Unfortunately, that's how it is. And in any state, if in a sting operation, in 2013 I published a sting operation conducted by one of the officers in which Chief Secretary to Narendra Modi, the Commissioner of Police and the other officers are heard and seen obfuscating the process of investigation. If any other state, the Attorney General would have been sacked at very moment. He continues to be the Additional Solicitor General of Gujarat right now. That's the Gujarat model. Unfortunately, the man, I forget his name, the man who was at that point of time in the MHA, who now goes on to say that Ishrat is a terrorist, is the same man who sits on the board of Adani's in Gujarat, and the same man who at that point of time said that Ishrat Jahan is not a terrorist and she should be given the benefit of doubt. It's not about power, it's about Congress could have well acted on this case way back. they could have started a trial in this case. Why did Congress not start a trial in this case? Why did Congress not ask for justice in Sohrabuddin case? That's the question that you should ask of the Congress. That's the question that we should ask the Congress, who's now considered the messiah of the seculars. I mean, this book has been out since 1 month. The Congress has not uttered a word about this book that says something about the secular party.
Rana, hi. When you say if this isn't evidence, are you being pessimistic about the justice in the cases of Gujarat?
I used to be pessimist till I got Amit Shah behind bars in 2010, the first serving Home Minister. There's always hope for justice, there's always scope for justice, and hopefully some eccentric police officer or investigating official will get up someday and try to make something out of it. You know, the easiest thing is to be a pessimist and a sadist and say nothing is going to happen to this country. The toughest thing is to have hope that something could perhaps happen out of this book and the contents of this book. So I'm being an optimist here and hopeful that someday, not the Congress, but some right-thinking people, not that right, will take things in their hands and get us justice.
Rana, thanks a lot for this great, wonderful book and bold book. But I have two concerns. One is a serious concern. Given the cruelty of our adversaries, I am very much concerned about your safety and security.
This is why I keep sipping Nimbu Pani.
That's a lighter weight thing. And second concern is, why did you ask Sri Krishna to write a preface in which he himself said, nobody will be in a position to validate all that is narrated and what she believes to be the truth, when this is the truth.
No,
and also to add to that, in Telangana, P.N. Sri Krishna has a very bad reputation. And P.N. Sri Krishna writing a preface to this book is actually a cause of concern.
I praise P.N. Sri Krishna. I mean, whether I'm not sure what's the opinion of him otherwise. I mean, as I said, we are not flawless human beings, all of us. We all have our flaws. I'm sure I have my flaws and you have your flaws, and so does Justice Sri Krishna. He's not an incarnation. Having said that, Justice Sri Krishna wrote a phenomenal report in the Mumbai riots, and the Sri Krishna Commission report, nobody can deny a flaw in it. When he has one foot out when he is writing this, is because as a former justice of the Supreme Court, his obligations towards the truth. Without having seen the tape, you have to give it to him that he wrote the foreword without having even seen or heard the tapes. He went by my word and my work so far. During the commission and the inquiry of Justice Sri Krishna, his own inquiry, he had officers deposing before him. Now he's writing a foreword based on officers talking to me. So he cannot take it as a final word.
Even then, that's uncharitable.
No, it's not uncharitable. I think it's very grateful, and I'm really grateful to him. I think it's very generous of him to have consented to written the foreword. And throughout, he came for the Mumbai Press Club launch, which is just 2 days ago, and in which he said that there is still hope that Rana's book will lead to justice. And for a former Chief Justice and for a Supreme Court judge to say this, and sitting in Maharashtra, I think it's a very bold decision.
I saw another hand go up somewhere there. You know, I am like the CBI. Sorry, I can only see what I want to see. There's a question here. Is there somebody hiding there? Oh, behind the camera. Come ahead.
Now, one straight question from Rana is, do you think that the victims of Gujarat and their families will they ever get justice?
I wish I had the answers. I tried my best. A lot of us have been trying our best. The fact that we could prove in a state like Gujarat with Narendra Modi and Amit Shah being at the helm of power that those 4 encounters of Sadiq Jamal, Samir Khan Pathan, Ishrat Jahan, Sohrabuddin, Tulsi Prajapati, Kausar P were fake encounters and cold-blooded murders is a ray of hope in our struggle for justice. I cannot say that, there will be justice tomorrow and all the cases will be solved. Nobody can. None of us here are superhumans. But I can assure you that most of the people that I know, journalists that I love and most of you love, are trying to do their little bit to get justice to those oppressed, and especially to the people of Gujarat.
Yeah, here's it.
And were you frightened at any time of the sting of it? How frightened were you? I won't ask you how frightened.
I had internalized a bit. See, the thing is, you cannot be frightened and do a sting operation like this. A drop of sweat on your forehead and your entire investigation goes bust. So, but yes, I was under psychiatric care for a long time after the investigation. And not just me, many investigators, many people who have gone undercover in the past have had to, because they lived dual lives. Living Maithili Tyagi was a different person altogether. There was no shred of Rana Ayub when I was Maithili Tyagi. Rana Ayub was an Urdu-speaking individual. Maithili Tyagi was a bigoted woman who spoke Sanskrit, who spoke flawless Sanskrit. So there's a difference, yeah.
I have a question. Excuse me.
All the way back.
Sorry, can you see me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. Echoing this person's concern about your safety, have you taken legal opinion before bringing out the book? Because chances are you may run foul of the law, because as you said, there are hundreds of cases which are slapped on people, and the powers that be are not exactly comfortable with what comes out here. Yeah?
One of the most high-profile Supreme Court lawyer who had seen the transcripts told me 3 days before the launch, he said, Rana, you still have time, please do not go ahead with this, because I am not going to fight your case, I have enough on my platter. And she said, trust me, you're going to go behind bars. So now I have the final laugh, but she says not for long. So you never know. You never know, and I'm living in hope that this government lives in denial and does not acknowledge the book, although that's not something that I want to. See, there is always scope for trouble, and they cannot, if they do not directly trouble me, they can trouble those close to me. They can trouble my family. They can slap cases against me 2-3 years later. You never know. These people do not. I mean, for them to slap a case against me now or target me is to give undue publicity to the book, which they do not want to. Right now, the reason why the BJP is silent is because any statement on this will divert attention, and the complacent television media will have to do a story on this. So I think that's one of the reasons. So I'm still hopeful that till such time that the BJP remains oblivious of this. Yeah.
Actually, I will step in here to ask you this question. Or do you think it is a governmental syndrome today? I am so powerful that nothing like this can touch me.
I wish I could say that, but Modi is too shrewd a man to say I'm so powerful that nothing can touch me. He knows that many have touched him despite the fact that he was powerful. So I think he's a shrewd administrator and he knows his work. And at this point of time, it would be harakiri for him to touch me, because it would be in a way validating the fact that what I'm saying in this book is right. So he would not want to give that chance to all of us on a platter.
Yes.
Myself, Sikandar Azam. I'm a PhD scholar from Pondicherry University. I came for this program. Rana, it is quite known to all of us that now they are ruling our nation. Okay? And it is also very difficult to expect from the judiciary in the system to get the justice. My concern is that is it possible to take this case into an international criminal court? One thing. Second thing, what has happened with the Tista Salwat, which is quite known to all of us? Could you please enlighten us about the Tista Salwat, since she has also taken this case into in High Court as well as in Supreme Court. So further adding to the point which has been raised by one of the speakers here, that about your personal safety and security, which is Tista Salwat is facing nowadays. So two questions is there. One is all about the Tista Salwat, another is all about the International Criminal Court.
Well, Tista is an activist, so I am not an activist, I'm a journalist, so that we have to draw the demarcation. That's a different case altogether, and what you see is now already in the newspaper, so I cannot comment much on it. I do not know much of the details of the case, in the sense that I do not know about the FCRA violation. That an independent investigation will lead to. Tista could be innocent and the government could be hounding her for wrong reasons. But standing here and sitting in judgment would be doing exactly what the Gujarat government does. So I would refrain from doing that. Where I'm concerned, see, I'm a journalist and I will only go by the work that I see and I do. I have not passed any judgment in the book. Till towards the end, I have said that I have remained silent till now, or till today I have remained silent. And I'm not going to pass a moral judgment. I have not said anywhere in the book that Modi is a criminal or Amit Shah is a criminal. I have not. That's left for the discerning reader to decide. That's left for the independent inquiry, an SIT or a CBI-led inquiry to decide whether even this investigation is genuine or not. I'm asking the SIT to investigate whether what I did was genuine or fake. Please question me, please interrogate me, please investigate everything that I've done, please investigate my motive. I'm open for investigation. So, and if the government does that tomorrow, I will not cry witch hunt, because this is a logical process that happens in every sting operation. I'm open to that. The second question again about safety, I've answered. International Tribunal, well, I first have to ensure that the book reaches the readers before there is an injunction, which could have happened, which can still happen. So first I'll have to deal with my countrymen before I go to an international tribunal.
Yes. One minute, please. 1 minute. There's a question there. Yeah.
What if,
I can hear hypothetical, yeah.
What if the BJP loses power in Gujarat? Will justice be done then?
I could turn around and say Congress was in power till 2014. Was justice done? No.
Yes. Yes.
Rana, first of all, congratulations for this book. I have gone through each and every sentence, every word. I am Zahidul Haq, Assistant Professor of Urdu in University of Hyderabad. Having totally different angle of myself, restricting to myself what Mr. Tathagat Sengupta, an Assistant Professor of the University, said here. I am having different view. I am trying to I want to know only one question, direct question. After reading this book, I have the opinion that police officers like P.C. Pandey, they are saying that police as an institution that is not biased. My question is then, what are the roles played by those police officers in the Gujarat carnage, whether directly or indirectly they are involved, they are responsible for that, number one. Number two, the underline of this book is all the officers misused by the then Sahab and his Ghulam were either OBC or scheduled caste. I am fortunate because I am saying it here in front of my one of the favorite MPs, Mr. Asaduddin Owaisi. He is here. He has given a slogan, Jai Bhim, Jai Bhim. What is the fate? What is the fate of this slogan? Or we want to have an alliance with all OBCs, SCs, minorities, underprivileges. Yes, I just want to know, when the state government has used these underprivileged, whether we are having any foresight, any reason to know that this Jai Bhim theory will work in future.
It's a very political statement, and I would not want to stick my neck out and talk about it. I would rather have a question asked as a journalist. Whether Dalits and Muslims come together, there's a consolidation. It's up to the political parties to decide what officers were doing in Gujarat. I think the implication is very clear in the book. There is a very clear undertone in the book that officers were towing the line of the government, whether by force or whether they were doing out of choice or whether they were lured with the prospect of a post-retirement job or a promotion. So I think that has been discussed threadbare. So I guess that answers your question.
Yeah, Vikram.
I have a question here. It is obvious to us that Modi and Amit Shah form a terrific team together, and they have done a very good job in Gujarat as a part of the teamwork. Should we be afraid?
Was that sarcasm, sir?
Yeah. Now this is serious now. Now that they are in power at the center, do you see this repeating at a larger scale? Because I see many time bombs, Ayodhya, Ram Mandir, things like that. Do you think that this combination can do some irreversible processes in polarization?
Well, there is a clear attempt at polarization, and whether it is Kairana, whether it is the killing of those who allegedly consume beef, making traders who trade in beef eat cow dung. I mean, these are small little episodes here and there, but there is an attempt to kind of communalize the situation. It's not as much communal, as much as opportunistic, because you have UP elections coming around the corner. So it's natural that Ayodhya will be discussed. It's natural that Ram Mandir will be discussed, and the construction of Ram Mandir will be discussed. And I'd be surprised if there is no communalization or polarization in the run-up to the election. That's not just the domain of the BJP. Let me tell you, That's a domain of every political party in this country. So BJP is no exception to the rule. And unfortunately, yes, what you saw in Gujarat is being translated to an extent on the national level. Of course, it's being done in a more dignified manner. Because our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, also goes to the United States and the UN and has to give speeches there, so he has to be a little more dignified and less. He was always dignified even as the Chief Minister of Gujarat.
Rana, one, I must compliment you. You are the bravest journalist this country has.
Very kind of you, so there are many like me.
Compliments to you. What is the underlying reason, in your view, why this book has not become the talk of the town in media, mainstream media, or amongst public intellectuals? There are only two ways in which a book as explosive as this can have an impact on eventual justice. One is